Maybe these are a little bit of harder questions, some examples that we can do together that might help you on your assignment later. So let's take a look at our first example. Our first example says 5x minus 2 equals 48. And when we talked about these in our notes, we remember to draw a line at our equal sign, right? We're splitting this problem into two sides. It helps us know when we do to one side, we have to do to the other. So now I can see my two sides. Here is my x, and I'm trying to get that x by itself at the very end so I can figure out what x equals. Remember, we are working backwards through PEMDAS. We want to get rid of addition and subtraction first. So I look here, do I see any addition and subtraction? You should see some. I see a minus 2, so the opposite or the inverse of minus 2 is to add 2. And remember, whatever I do to one side, I have to do to the other, so I'm going to add 2 on this side as well. And let's see what happens here. A minus 2 and a positive 2 zero out, so they cancel out there. And all that I'm left with on this side is a 5x. I'm going to bring down the equal sign on my line, and I have to do some math here on the right side. 48 plus 2. 48 plus 2, that's a pretty simple problem. It gives me 50. So now I'm one step closer solving for x. You can see that x is still right here. I still have a 5 on that side though, so I still need to get rid of it. I don't see any more addition and subtraction, but what I do see is multiplication. It says 5 times x. Remember we talked about whenever that number is right next to that x, it means multiplication. So 5 times x. What's the opposite or the inverse of times? Hopefully you said division. We're going to divide both sides by 5. We're dividing both sides by 5. I draw that line. Remember, it looks like a fraction. I'm dividing by 5. These 5's zero out. And it leaves me with, I'm going to draw my lines, I'm going to leave my answer, it leaves me with x equals, and then another math problem on the right-hand side, 50 divided by 5 is 10. Absolutely. I got 10 as my answer, but I always like to go back and double check my work just to make sure that I have the correct answer. So I'm going to substitute this 10 back into my original where x was. This is like double checking, make sure I'm always going to get 100. So I'm going to substitute that back in where x is. So I would really have 5 instead of x, I'm going to put parentheses 10 minus 2 equals 48. And let's see if that is true. We're going to follow regular PEMDAS here. 5 times 10 is 50. I'm going to bring everything else down. Minus 2 equals 48. 50 minus 2 is 48. And look at that. 48 equals 48. That is true. That means my answer of x equals 10 is correct. Always a good idea to check your work. Let's do another example together. Here's our second example. Again, I'm drawing the line down at that equal sign to split it in half. I'm going to undo addition and subtraction first. So here I don't see any subtraction. I do see addition, so I want to get rid of that first. I want to get rid of that plus 5. When I say get rid of, right, we're zeroing it out. The opposite of plus 5 is to subtract 5 on both sides of that equation. I'm going to draw my line. Let's see what happens. This plus 5 and the minus 5 zero out, and it leaves me with 2r equals, and on the right side I gotta do some math. 9 minus 5 leaves me with 4. I almost have the r by itself. I have to do one last thing. I don't see addition and subtraction. Now I see multiplication. I see 2 times r. So that opposite of multiplication, I'm really thinking about it, is division. So I'm going to divide by that number, which is 2. So divide both sides by 2. And let's see what we get. The 2 zero out. I get r equals 4 divided by 2 is 2. That's the answer that I got, but remember, we're always going to go back and check it just to make sure. I'm going to plug this 2 back in where r is. I'm going to substitute it there. So I'm going to rewrite it over here. 2, instead of r, I got 2 as my answer, plus 5 equals 9. Let's see if this works. I'm going to use regular PEMDAS. 2 times 2 is 4. I still have plus 5 equals 9. 4 plus 5 is 9 equals 9. 9 equals 9. That is true. That means that this answer is correct. Got 2 more examples for you, and then you'll be all set. Let's look at our next example. Here's our third example. I like to draw the line straight down the equal sign. This one's going to look a little different. This one might be a little bit confusing. It's worded a little bit different. So let's look at this. This negative 2 is multiplying to the x there. It says negative 2 times x. What I have on the outside here is this positive 5 sitting out there on the outside. I need to get rid of that positive 5 first, and that's what's confusing here. Sometimes, if I'm just looking at this normally, if I didn't have this box here or that, some people would say that they need to get rid of that minus 2 or that negative 2 first. However, I cannot do that because that is multiplying to the x, so I'm going to leave that for last. I want to get rid of this 5. And like I mentioned just a second ago, it's a positive 5. So let's think about that. How could you zero out a positive 5? What would be the opposite of that to get to 0? The opposite of plus 5, or positive 5, would be negative 5 on both sides. I'm going to do that to both sides. Positive 5 and negative 5 zero out. And it leaves me, be sure that you bring down that correct, it leaves me with negative 2x equals, and we got to do some math over here, 6 minus 5 is 1. My last step, it says negative 2 times x, so like we've been doing, the opposite of multiplication is division, and I'm going to divide by a negative 2, because there is a negative 2 that's attached to that x, so I'm dividing by that negative. You can't forget about it. Let's see what happens. My negative 2 is 0. I'm left with x equals, 1 divided by negative 2. I'm going to type that in my calculator. I get negative 0.5. Negative 0.5. You can leave it as a fraction. I'm going to change it to a decimal. That's what I got for my answer. Since I got this decimal, I am definitely going to go back and substitute in to make sure my answer is correct. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's go ahead and take that negative 0.5 and let's substitute it back in to where x was in my original. So I'm going to write that off to the side. We had 5 minus 2. Instead of x, I'm going to put negative 0.5 parentheses equals 6. And let's use regular PEMDAS to solve this. Remember, PEMDAS, I have to do this multiplication first. So negative 2 times negative 0.5. Which gives me positive 1. A negative times a negative is positive. Still have a 5 equals 6. I'm going to add these together. 5 plus 1 is 6. And that equals 6. It is true. That means that this answer is correct. And one little thing, if you did not know how to do PEMDAS with this right here, you could type what's in that purple box right there into your calculator all at one time with your parentheses and everything. If you type all that in, you press enter, you should get 6. Then you would be able to say, hey, 6 equals 6, it's correct, my answer is good. Thank you for always checking those and substituting back in to check your work. We have one more example to do together. It is this one. As you might see, it looks already a little weird. It has that fraction in there. So we're going to make sure we talk about these so that way you can do it on your own when you get your assignment. I'm going to draw my line straight down at the equal sign. Here is my x. Remember, I want to do addition and subtraction first. That's what I want to get rid of. So I want to get rid of that plus 2 first. So I think to myself, what's the inverse or the opposite of plus 2? That opposite is to subtract 2. So I will do that on both sides. Zeros out that. I'm left with this x over 4 equals, when I do the math over here, 6 minus 2 is 4. I have one last step here. This says x divided by 4. Remember that fraction line means divided by. So I think to myself, what is the opposite of dividing? The opposite of dividing is multiplying. So if I take this whole side and multiply it by 4, I have to take this whole side and multiply it by 4. because now this divided by 4 and this multiplying by 4 is opposite, so this zeroes each other out to where all I have is x equals, and I have to do the math over here, 4 times 4 is 16. Now this is our last example. Of course we're going to substitute it back in and check. I'm going to substitute this back in for where x is, so let's see. I'm going to put my 16 up there, divided by 4, plus 2 equals 6. I'm going to solve like regular PEMDAS. Remember, PEMDAS says parentheses, exponents, multiplication, division. I have to do multiplication, division first. So 16 divided by 4 is 4, plus 2 equals 6. When I add those together, I get 6. And that is true. 6 equals 6, so this answer is correct. I can go ahead and turn that in. Remember, if you don't know how to do this PEMDAS by yourself, you could type in this first part in front of the equal sign exactly how you see it into your calculator, and it should give you 6, right? Then you'd be able to say 6 equals 6, so my answer is correct. Okay, always be sure to go back and check your work. Here are some good examples for you. You can watch this video as many times as you need, and always be sure to reach out to your teacher for help.